everyone. So the past week I've been going through the values for composition section of the famous artist course. The link is below if you want to download and go through it on your own. So there's mainly 5 things that they, 5 notes of importance that they have in the chapter in regards to value for composition. So the first one is to use different tones to create contrast, because those contrasting areas is usually where the viewer will look when they look at an image. So in my example, I made basically Batman. So what I did was I wanted his face to be the most important and I wanted his emblem to be the most important. So what I did was basically I made the background white and Batman's like gliding around in the city. So I made his cape area basically black, and that value matches like his overall body's value. So they kind of blend in. So the only things that pop up are mainly his face, which is what I want the main focus to be on, and also his emblem to indicate that he's Batman. And so, but the emblem being white on this dark background is what helps with creating that focal area, and the second focal area is the face, mainly because of the contrast that I'm adding within the drawing itself. The second tip that they spoke about was how values is the great way on communicating mood. So for the mood section, I wanted to try my best to draw the same portrait just with 2 varying different lightings to indicate like a different feeling and evoke a different feeling when in the image itself. So this first one, I wanted it to be more airy and more light. So that's pretty straightforward. So I kept it as bright as possible. I didn't shade in too darkly. I didn't add too many highlights either, because the overall image itself is in like a brighter values. And then this one, I just made it much darker basically. I was able to go into my deep shadows and stuff. I still have some areas of white, but that makes the scene, like this portrait, more dramatic compared to this one. This one feels a bit more fresh and more like alive and more outdoorsy, while this one feels like not only is it indoors, it's in like a darker kind of location, and it adds a little bit more drama compared to this one. The third tool that they showed in the chapter is about value patterns. We can choose, which you can see here, and there's a multiple ways of using value patterns, but the examples of the book only showed like 4. So the first one is light against dark, which I used in the Batman one right here, just his head area, and I also used it basically, oh yeah, I didn't use it here. But yeah, so the first one is light against dark. So you can see I basically just drew Superman. This one would be a composition if he was in space, basically, where he gets all the light. The second one is dark against light. It's pretty straightforward. It's just, I tried to get him as much into shadow and dark shading as possible, and the background I left alone. The third one is when we talk about midtones or mid values. So this is basically mid-tone and dark against light. So it's very similar to dark against light, but the difference is it allows you to add more details because you're now able to use like more mid-tones. So you could have the darker eyebrows and the eyes, and you could have a little bit more shadow and definition in the clothing itself. And then the final one is dark and light against a mid-tone. So this would be more of a dramatic scene. So I basically used white to get the really bright highlights on him to show that he's standing there in the middle. And then like for a majority of him, he's all dark and in shadow with this bright light hitting from the side. And the background is more of a mid-tone. So it doesn't blend in with the way Superman here is standing. It's more like, it still keeps that contrast of that silhouette of Superman, while the bright lights make the silhouette even stronger. And then the last and final thing they talked about was a bit larger. It was like value keys. So basically what a value key is if you can see at the top here, I basically did a full value range from my darkest darks to my brightest bright. A value key is a very specific area within that range to depict the image you're trying to depict. So for this, I kind of wanted to do a little bit of a comic book kind of practice. So I drew Superman basically flying up and stopping this guy from beating this person up. And I did each one in a different value range. So this first one is all mid values. So there's not super ultra darks and there's not super whites. It's all in the middle. So you can see it doesn't get too dark. Like even these glasses, which is the darkest part of the character, it's not as dark as it could go. The second one I went is high key. So you can see right here, the darkest dark I got is probably like, if it was up here, probably like up to here, like this whole section right there. And you can see that even the eyes are pretty bright, and you can see the hair and the cape. I tried to make it more like an indication of a cape flowing in the background. So I basically used my darkest darks in that light area and shaded that in. But I didn't allow this drawing to have any like defining lines. Now this third one, I kind of had like the idea that like Superman's shadow kind of like fills up the area, and like we see this character kicking this person, and it's in a really dark kind of tonality. So you can see the tones here is from really dark to kind of not too deep into the middle, but it's enough into the middle to have more definition on the characters. So yeah, I made it so that this character is kind of kicking this person, and Superman's shadow is what creates that like darker value key, right? So you can see the darkest darks are here. There's no real bright lights. If anything, I made a mistake by allowing the areas that the shadow doesn't hit to be as white as they are. If I were to follow this key exactly, I would have shaded all this in to a little bit darker than white, right? So maybe at like around here is where I should have shaded that, and that still would have been considered a low-key kind of image. And then this final one is a full value scale, so it means I used from the darkest darks all the way to white, and I tried to go everywhere in between. So you can see I basically just did that by using colors. So I made sure that his shirt looked white, and you can see that his head is in shadow a bit with some light hitting it, and you can see that the pants are really dark. So to summarize, the 5 rules of composition, the 5 rules of values for composition is 1, according to the Batman one, to use different tones to create contrast, and that allows the viewer to see where to focus. Number 2 is using tones to create mood. So using, if you're able to make things lighter and brighter to make the scene feel more happy, always make sure to pay attention to the values of your image to make things, so to evoke the feelings that you want people to feel. Number 3 is to always make sure to use your value patterns. So it doesn't have to be as simple as light against dark. It could be light against dark against light, like how I did on the Batman, right? So I did light against dark, and then I did the dark shape is also against light. So making sure to plan out your images using value patterns is a great way to help create the focal areas of your image. So just to summarize the 4 that I have here, I have light against dark, I have dark against light, I have middle values against light, and I have light and dark against middle values. And then the final rule that was on the book, sorry, the final rule that was in the book is to use and focus on value keys. So value keys and mood kind of play within the same area. Of course, you can always use a full range of values, but try to keep a majority of the values within a specific range, right? So if I were to fix this, I would keep this middle range, but I would hit the really bright brights on the hair and stuff, and the really dark darks I would use to fill in and define the face even more. things like that. So using value keys to make sure you're fitting the mood that you're interested in having. And using all of these is a great way to kind of get your brain to plan things out when you're drawing a composition or drawing any picture you're interested in making. And if you like this video, subscribe for more. I know it was a pretty short video, but if you have any questions and comments, I could provide more details. And as always, you could look at the book in the description below. Thank you.